Amém. Good evening, everyone. So welcome to this Western Europe regional consultation meeting of the Global Agenda for Sustainable Livestock. My name is Nancy Bourgeois, and I'm the Academia and Research Cluster Coordinator of the GASL, of the Global Agenda. So over the next 2 hours, we will have 5 presentations highlighting the drivers of change in 3 sectors: health, environment, and technology. In between these 5 presentations, we will have 5 to 7 minutes slots for 1 or 2 questions from my side, maybe also from the keynote speakers. And then at the end of these presentations, we will have a 20 minutes session for questions and answers from the audience online and in the room, but also from the keynote speakers. This meeting is to inform the next Global Agenda meeting, which will take place in Chiang Mai and at the end of October. The title of this meeting is the Multi-Stakeholder Collaboration to Strengthen Sustainability and Resilience of Livestock Systems in Response to Drivers of Change. So quite a complex issue. Before I hand the word to Tanawa Tianxin for the formal opening, just a few housekeeping information. For the people online, you can use the chat for Q&A for your questions, and we will answer in plenary. Please also mute your microphone online. And this session is recorded, so to inform everyone online and here. And I think that's all for the time being for the housekeeping questions. So with this, I would like to hand over to Tanawa Tianxin for the opening. Thank you very much for opening this session.
Thank you very much, moderator. And also I would like to take this opportunity to welcome all participants to join this session organized by the Global Agenda for Sustainable Livestock, or GASL. And also thank you, Madam Chair of Global Agenda for Sustainable Livestock, and also other speakers. To be more practical now to the very informal part. This week, we started discussing about livestock issues. As all of you know, that livestock issues is a sensitive issue. Even though now most of us enjoy that we have an opportunity to discuss this issue in FAO. But we may not know that outside, many people feel reluctant why FAO discussing about livestock. And that's why this one is normal. And we will perhaps in the next week or whatever, we will hear some feedback. This one is normal situation that we are expecting when we started thinking about organizing this global conference on sustainable livestock transformation. And that's why it should not be a surprise. But anyway, we know that we come with strong commitment that livestock can do more for better production, better nutrition, better environment, and a better life for all. And that's why it's a time for livestock sectors to transform itself to sustainability. As we discussed during this week, if someone asks you what is sustainable livestock, what is sustainable livestock transformation, we don't have a specific definitions because each countries have different needs, have different priorities. There's no one size fit all. When we talk about livestock, each sectors also very different. Each countries have a different system. And that's why when last 20 years, when GASL was established, which actually the second GASL meeting was organized in Phuket, Thailand, that I remember very well. But at that time, I also worked with our colleagues, Henning Stenfeld. But this year, the 13th multi-stakeholder meeting of GASL will go back to Thailand. And we can revisit what we make progress and what we can do more. And as FAO hosting the GASL Secretariat here, FAO also need to make commitment how FAO can provide more support to the work of GASL and the member of GASL and others organization. And that's why it's very nice that today a colleague from Western Europe who come here to discuss about the future of GASL, the activity of GASL, how we're going to strengthen sustainable livestock transformation together. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Thanawat Jensen, for this opening and these welcoming words. Now I would like to hand over to Shirley Tarawali. She's the chair of the Global Agenda for Sustainable Livestock. Shirley, the floor is yours.
Thanks very much, Nancy. Thank you, Thanawat, too. And it's really good to be here with some in person. I see we also have some in line and online. And thank you all very much for taking time to join. I know we've sat through meetings all day, and as Thanawat said, those have been really important discussions about sustainable livestock and transformation. This consultation is an opportunity for a diversity of livestock experts, civil society, governments, livestock keepers, we hope as well, and other stakeholders in Western Europe to meet and explore how livestock systems are impacted by multiple and sometimes unexpected drivers, and what can be done to respond in ways that strengthen sustainability and resilience, not just of livestock systems themselves, but of food systems as a whole. As you heard, my name is Shirley Tarawali. I'm chair of the Global Agenda for Sustainable Livestock. I'm also Assistant Director General at ILRI, the International Livestock Research Institute, and I'm based in Kenya. I'm just going to make a few remarks now about GASL, the Global Agenda for Sustainable Livestock, and today's regional consultation, putting it in the wider context, and Thanawat already touched on that. Firstly, about GASL, it's a multi-stakeholder partnership that brings together all types of livestock stakeholders, from smallholders to commercial and everything in between, with all types of organizations, NGOs, governments, academia, private and public sector, civil society, and multilateral organizations. And through rather a unique adding together role, we work to assemble evidence, to foster dialogue and consensus around livestock-related issues, to support practice and policy change towards sustainable livestock solutions that contribute to development ambitions, as well as the vision of GASL. And that states by 2030, sustainable, inclusive, resilient, and diverse livestock systems across the world contribute significantly to the SDGs and are integral to sustainable food systems. So today's meeting is one of 8 regional consultations taking place across the world this month and next, before we have a global meeting, as Thanawat mentioned, in Thailand at the end of October in Chiang Mai. And that meeting's going to focus on multi-stakeholder collaboration to strengthen sustainability and resilience of livestock systems in response to drivers of change. So these regional meetings really aim to provide everybody with a chance to look at what are those drivers of change. We know they've impacted the world as a whole, what these mean for livestock systems in this particular region, and what does that mean for livestock sustainability resilience. The drivers we identified for this purpose include environmental and technological drivers, health and disease drivers, geopolitical and socioeconomic drivers. Each of them have been unpacked a little bit at a global level by a series of webinars that took place recently, organized by GASL, as well as by CATIE, Tropical Research and Higher Education Center in Costa Rica. They're all up online and we'll be sharing the reports shortly. Today's consultation thus allows us to explore the actual and potential impacts of those 4 drivers, not least in relation to sustainability domains that we as GASL have identified as important. That's food and nutrition security, livelihoods and economic growth, animal health and welfare, and climate and natural resource use. Each regional consultation is also looking at how a multi-stakeholder approach, the one that GASL brings, can bring sustainable actions and solutions in each of those domains. So the global meeting then provides an opportunity to bring together those pieces from the regional consultations in the context of the challenges that all of us who work in livestock must face to foster greater sustainability. So we'll have plenary sessions, panel interventions, including representation from the regions in the panels. So likely to have certainly some from this region as part of that. And we really hope for a great diversity of stakeholders in that meeting, because harnessing diversity is one of the things that we see really exemplified as a strength of GASL. So thanks to everybody for organizing this meeting, as I said, for all of you who have come, for those who will present and share with us, both here and online. Tanawat, thank you for hosting us all here this week. And I think it will be a very rich and fruitful discussion, and one that, as I said, we will continue in the coming weeks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shirley, for setting the scene and putting this specific consultation in the broader perspectives of consultations. Now, I would like to invite our colleague, Professor Ulf Magnusson from the Swedish University in Uppsala, Swedish University of Agricultural Sciences, sorry, who will give us an overview about health and disease drivers. Thank you, Ulf.
Thank you, Nancy, for the introduction, and good afternoon, dear colleagues. I hope we here in the panel may cheer you up and energize you a little bit. It's good with oxygen here in this room, I think, compared to some other rooms. So anyway, I don't think I will give answers to questions as such. It's more about triggering thinking. It's a lot of trade-offs in this sector, as we all know. There is no perfect solutions and so. So I will talk about animal health drivers or disease drivers for changing livestock systems. And I will talk about basically 2 kinds of change drivers. And we have developed what we call the GASL sustainability domains, and you can read more about it in this publication here, how animal health and welfare relates to these aspects. We produced this a few years ago, some colleagues. So the two types of change drivers. The one is very obvious, I think. And that is what we call the transboundary animal diseases, these terrible plagues like the avian influenza, the foot and mouth disease, and also the African swine fever. I was asked to talk a little bit specifically about the African swine fever some month ago, and then we had a chance to have an outbreak of that disease some 3 weeks ago in Sweden for the first time. So that is close to my heart at the moment. And of course, the effects of that, or the short-term immediate effects, are of course the farmers' economy, trade restrictions, and of course animal welfare and ethics. Animals are suffering from disease. I think often we think about, or maybe some of us think about animal welfare and not including animal health. The freedom from disease is a central component of animal welfare. And also potentially public health. That is particularly true for avian influenza, that could turn into a zoonotic disease that are affecting humans. So that is the transboundary animal disease. And the second type, which might not be that obvious, is new regulations related to animal health. And this one that I highlighted in red here is about the new regulations about how to use veterinary medicines in the European Union. I look here at my Swiss colleagues. I hope you could bear with the yeah, it's okay to talk about the European Union. So and that could affect the. I see some Brits here as well. Sorry for that. It's about the farmer's profit, how to use antibiotics or not. And it's also about capacity among extension services and animal health services. And of course, also animal health and welfare and the public health, the spillover from possible spillover of resistance from the animal sector or the livestock sector to the human sector. We should remember, though, that about 70% of all AMR cases in humans are healthcare related. So, African swine fever. It's present both in wild boars and domestic pigs. And this fantastic picture that I stole from The Guardian, it came up some 3 years ago, is to make you remember. It's taken from a park in central Berlin. It's not a fake one, it's true. And it's for you to remember that the wild boars are a central element of the spread of African swine fever in Europe. And in Germany, like in Sweden, it's a true plague. It's very high population of wild boars, too high according to my perception. The disease is present in several Western European countries. And it has been successfully stopped in the Czech Republic and in Belgium. There were some localized outbreaks that they managed to control by fencing and intensive hunting of the wild boars. And they managed to get rid of the disease in these areas. And that is the methodology that my Swedish colleagues are trying to apply now in Sweden. I think that is quite impressive work that our colleagues in the Czech Republic started to do. And just to remind you, this is a very lethal disease for pigs. It's a non-zoonotic, it's not dangerous for humans, but it's spread by humans and feedstuffs, and there is no vaccine at present. There are 2 kinds of vaccines trying on trial or applied in Vietnam, and I just learned very recently that have stopped the distribution of one of the vaccines because pigs became sick, and why that is happening, I don't know. Maybe some of you have more information on that, but it's a very intelligent virus in the sense, so that's why it's difficult to make a vaccine. So possible change for the livestock system or the livestock food system. I'm doing
just not your mistake. It's not shared, so people online cannot see it. It's not your fault. Can we just share the screen? Sorry.
Yeah, sure.
So can you share? Sorry. Huh?
No, it's fine, but I don't have to restart.
No, no.
So, because it's not in English. Where is the presentation?
This one.
This?
Sorry. Huh?
Okay. Sorry, but
Is it, make it in presentation mode?
yes, it's not in English. Sorry. Oh,
Okay, that's fine.
it's good.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah, I'm fine. Yeah, possible change of the spread of these transponder animal diseases. One, of course, that it's calling for stricter biosecurity measures, which could be difficult sometimes. Our Danish colleagues, they are building a fence along the border to Germany to stop the wild boars to come into Denmark. Denmark are free of wild boars. Some are swimming, but and hunt the intensive hunting along the border there. And one thing is, of course, the future of this kind of animal welfare friendly practices of outdoor keeping of pigs, and because they are very coming close to the wild boars. And it's the same for avian flu. When we have outbreaks of the avian flu, the restriction is to keep for all the hobby poultry farmers to keep the chicken indoor. So this one then, a new regulation. Some key elements here is to stop the prophylactic or metaphylactic use. That is before it, not that is for non-treatment. It's used to prevent disease, and also have measures to routine administration. That is also banned and stopped now. And another element is that these medicines that are critically important for human medicine should not be used in animals. So these are the key elements in this regulation. And you cannot see this one, but it's countries in Europe that are reporting the sales of antibiotics, which is a proxy for the use of antibiotics divided by the biomass. And you see there on the right column there, it's a tremendous variation. And these countries that already have a very low use of antibiotics, I think they are well off when these new regulations comes. But these countries that where there is a high use, which is depending on the prophylactic use, etc., and regular use, they will have a long road to go to adopt to this. Yes, please. Yeah, sorry, it's more than tenfold differences. This is from the SVAC report. It's by country, but of course, we are using more antibiotics in poultry and pigs in general. So countries with high populations of poultry and pigs are affected by this. So it's a broad picture. So I'm talking too long. No? So what changes to be expected or required here? I think more focus on disease prevention. And even though I'm a veterinarian, me and my colleagues often talk about biosecurity and vaccination, but I think good animal husbandry practices are the key. It's the fundament to reduce the use of antibiotics. I think that has to be remembered. And then also, I think it's increased demand on facilities, on the skills of producers, and also the attitude by me and my colleagues in using antibiotics. In several countries, their main business is to sell antibiotics to the farmers, and also for the extension services. There are new skill sets and attitudes that are needed, I think. So this is how animal health and welfare affect the other sustainability dimensions of sustainability. Shirley, help me out. Sustainability domains is the key word we have. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Ulf. Allow me just one question. You mentioned this new legislation. Is there something parallel or similar in the human health sector?
Not to my knowledge. When I screen the EU websites and the WHO, it's a lot of recommendations, but no harsh, to my knowledge, maybe someone else know, but no harsh regulations or directives in the same way as we do have it in the livestock sector. And that is an interesting question, actually, why it is not like that.
Maybe somebody has the answer, but unless there is a burning question or remark to Ulf, I propose that we move to the next speakers, and you can keep your questions for the longer Q&A session at the end. So the next speaker is Bill Canalan from Ireland, Chief Inspector and Head of Environmental Directorate, Department of Agriculture, Food and the Marine.
So the first part is just to, when the presentation comes up, is just to give you a flavour of Irish production systems. And I suppose Ireland as a country and the importance of livestock production within that. Then I'll just talk very briefly in terms of the targets that have been set for us, and I suppose our roadmap of actions that we're engaged in terms of working with farmers towards that. And because it's diversification, I have a slide in terms of diversified food production systems as well. It's coming, folks. Bill, yeah. Yes, perfect. Okay. I do press on. Okay. So topic is diversified. So I can see here. Can I move it? No. Okay, you can see that. So just environmentally, we are very much a temperate climate in Ireland. We sit on the western seaboard of Europe, so we're very much informed in terms of our weather by the North Atlantic drift. So we don't have highs and lows that a lot of people would have. We certainly don't have a shortage of water. Rainfall levels are very high. And I suppose as a country, if temperatures go below zero, we think we're going to freeze to death. And if it goes above 25 degrees centigrade, we're going to basically collapse with sweat. It's just, we live in a very, I suppose, similar environment, winter and summer, in terms of we don't get highs and lows that a lot of people would get. Environmentally, our water quality is generally quite good. We're in the top third in terms of Europe, but we are challenged with nitrogen and phosphorus in excess in some rivers, and that's a challenge. But one of the issues we have as well is that we have a lot of diversity. So if you look at soils, for example, in Europe, you have large blocks of similar type land. Okay, we could have, over the matter of a kilometre, 3 or 4 different soil types, and even within farms, very significant differences. Our farming landscape, it's a pasture-based system. Over 90% of it would be in grassland, so that has generated a real focus in terms of livestock, and that's quite historical. It goes back hundreds of years in terms of that process. Average number of farms is 137,000 and farm size at 32. So even our, I suppose, most productive full-time farms would be in the region of about 50, 55 hectares at the most, with 80 to 90 cows. So land area is 4.8 million hectares, long growing season. What's that mean? So in the south of the country, you're looking at up to 300 days of animals at pasture outside. Okay, and in the north of the country, it'll be about 260 days. And I know many countries have bonus payments for animals that are let out for particular times. If we would just call them poor farmers, if they're not maximizing the time out on grass and out in the land, because grass production is quite high, given the temperate climate. It's a relatively low cost feed, and it's both, I suppose, environmentally and from an animal welfare point of view seen very positively. But the role of agriculture, because we're not an industrialized country, okay, we don't have a lot of heavy industry. Emissions from agriculture make up a big portion of our overall emissions profile from the country, which will feed into the demands in terms of the sector and changing. So you'll see the numbers there, which is 37.5%, and about 60% of that is coming from methane directly from animals rather than manure, because they're not outside. So I focus then in terms of, we have both European targets to meet and also national targets. And a national target, a very ambitious target, has been set to reduce emissions nationally, including agriculture, from 51% by 51% by 2030. So in other words, having our emissions profile economy-wide by 2030. But that has to be disaggregated, and that's through a sectoral plan for each of the various sectors, whether it's housing, transport, agriculture, etc. And the one for agriculture has set a target of 25% reduction in absolute emissions. This is not efficiency gain, this is absolute emissions. So how do you achieve that? I suppose my job is really, I suppose, putting plans together in terms of trying to match the political ambition then to the practical reality of farming. So I've distilled it into three main areas: inputs and additives, husbandry, and diversification. So inputs and additives, as a grass-based system, predominantly, we are dependent on nitrogen fertilizer as part of that. We are not heavy users, but equally so, there's a lot of opportunity to both reduce fertilizer usage and change its type to reduce the overall nitrous oxide that would be associated. Over the last 2 years, albeit it was precipitated by the cost of fertilizer and the Ukrainian war, we've seen approximately a 30% reduction in overall fertilizer use. They have been quite good years in terms of grass growth, which has to be noted, but equally so through better use of organic manures. Okay, even though the animals are only housed for 3-4 months of the year in locations, how do you best use that animal manure fertilizer to replace nitrogen inputs? We've just introduced a new regulation in Ireland where anybody buying chemical fertilizer will have to go through a database. So government effectively is collecting from all sales points records based on legislative requirements for what farmers are using in terms of fertilizer usage. Additives then are around feed additives. And I suppose the inherent challenge, and really we're delighted to be involved in the likes of GASL, is that additives are more suited many times to indoor systems. But that doesn't work in an Irish situation. And we don't want to generate, I suppose, an indirect negative by seeing animals being housed for feeding of additives. So here you're looking at areas of vaccines, early intervention, or the likes of bolus provisions of feed additives. And we're researching those at pace. In terms then of husbandry practices, so this really is around that breeding and feeding, etc. So if we look at breeding, one thing I'd like to bring to your attention is we have nationally, I think it's a really important initiative, which is called the Irish Cattle Breeding Federation. So government department originally was responsible for the breeding direction of the industry. That was given over to the industry through a cooperative basis supported by government, who set those breeding ambitions. And importantly, all the players are sharing information and data into a central database, which is then translating into a simple single number for a farmer to understand what is the breeding direction they need to take. So that's called the economic breeding index in terms of dairy. So our cows today are smaller than they were before, are producing higher milk solids, are milking for longer, and have better fertility. Why? Because the data from milk recording, AI, sales records all go into a single database, which turns them into one single number, which is useful for farmers then in terms of guiding their decisions. On the breeding in terms of age, we have an ambition of bringing down the age of slaughter of our beef animals. And that's already happening through the access to this sort of information. I think critically, there are issues that have to be grappled with. So for example, data. If you have companies who want to monetize data, you naturally have this challenge of how do they make it available centrally as well. And we have ensured that that data is owned by the farmers, so it doesn't become an issue of competitive advantage between competitors. And finally, diversification. Twitter boss was saying Ireland is going to cull 200,000 cows. That's not exactly what we were proposing. But if you look at it in terms of our approach is reducing emissions, the opportunity to remove emissions, and a contribution to energy from agriculture, whether it's biomass, whether it's development of an AD industry, which we don't have. And those will be, I suppose, opportunities for farmers that we try to create that may be an alternative income source and generate the same production from even what might be a lesser number of animals. I'm nearly there, folks. So if you look at this from a transformational change, when somebody sets a 25% target, that is so ambitious that we cannot leave anybody behind us. It has to be through engagement. And the way I describe it as a regulator, as somebody working in government, is our policies are around 3 pillars. Yes, we have a certain amount of regulation. That's to generate movement in the right direction, whether it's cutting nitrogen allowances or fertilizer registers, etc. We have a certain access to incentives, whether it's support through the Common Agricultural Policy and making sure they're aligned with the policy objectives of government. And the final one, which is critical, which is business, in my mind. Why? Because the consumer is demanding this improvement. When I talk to farmers, I describe there's a hierarchy in terms of food. Its first standard is its availability. If you're hungry, you don't worry about other requirements in terms of your food supply. Once that's achieved, it must be safe. And I think in Western Europe, we've achieved that standard. Then its sustainability is becoming greater and greater importance in terms of the requirement of the consumer for sustainable food source. And the final, in my mind, is health. And I think the conference over the last couple of days is bringing all these together. The consumer of tomorrow is looking and saying, are these foods healthy? Nancy has got up, so I need to move.
Yes.
Diversification, last point then. We have identified opportunities for diversification. They include increasing forestry, development of an AD industry, which is a nascent state in Ireland. We are importers of grain, so increasing our tillage area from about 350,000 hectares to 400,000 hectares, and also organic production. I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you very much.
It was very subtle.
Thank you very much. So, Bill, you exposed this strategy. How do you expect the impact on trade of animal products from Ireland with this strategy?
So, if you look at it, we are a producer of livestock-based proteins, and we have traditionally been very dependent on an export market in terms of that. So, in terms of meat and milk products, 90% of that goes abroad. Okay, is exported. So we retain that ambition of supplying that market, but you also recognize that that market is more discerning and more demanding in terms of what it expects. Okay, and the mechanism we try and get everybody on the same page is through a vision document every 5 years. So it's the Food Vision 2030 document at present, where the stakeholders have responsibility and authority to, I suppose, set the objectives themselves as part of the process with government. And that has resulted in an ownership of some of the requirements and the ambition. And I think that's something that's somewhat different. It's challenging, it takes a bit more time. There's often division. There's no point in saying otherwise. But critically then, if you don't have ownership of the targets and that recognition of sustainability, and that is not just government is saying this is a priority, but also your food processors and higher value food processors saying it to farmers just as equally important. It becomes very divisive, and it's still always going to be divisive, but it minimizes that division.
You, Bill, I think the approach is very much aligned with the multi-stakeholder partnerships, SDG 17, quite a strong example of these kind of partnerships. Okay, now, thanks a lot, Bill. I would like to move to the third speaker. It's Latifa Najjar. She is working at the Institut de l'Élevage in France, IDEL. So, Latifa, I hand over the word to you. I hope you hear us well and you see the presentation.
So do you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so I don't see my presentation, so probably. Okay, so
can you put it in, sorry, can you put it in the presentation mode, please?
Yeah. Is it okay? Okay, thank you very much. Do you hear me very well, Nancy?
I can hear you, but we see two slides at the same time, so you need to put in.
Okay, so I have to put it. Is it? No. No. Sorry about that, but I'm not really. I don't know how to handle that.
Otherwise, you can unshare and we can screen it from here.
Oh, okay. Just a moment. I try to figure that. No, so it does not work. How can I do that?
I think the easiest, Latifa, is if we screen it from here and you just be next for the next slide.
Okay, okay.
So Lavinia will just share just 1 minute. Is it shared? Okay.
Is it okay for, because I don't see anything.
Do you see it now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, so thank you very much for, okay, I don't know if it is yours or my screen, but anyway, I try to do my best in order to give you this presentation. So first, I would like to thank the organizer and having me today. I would focus basically on challenges and drivers farmers are facing, and specifically the ruminant sector. And I will also try to give you some kind of solution that we adopt in France in order to respond to those drivers of change. So next slide. Okay, so we have to remind, it is really very important to remind that the French livestock sector is a large contributor of the sustainable goals of the United Nations. And we have to say also that the ruminant sector contributes to the vitality by creating jobs estimated to be 216,000 and for the direct jobs and 225,000 indirect jobs. So livestock ruminant sector improve also the quality of the environment. As you can see, we have 30 million hectares of grassland. And to note, we have almost 70% of farms which are engaged in good practice and agroecology. So next slide, please. So in this slide, the intention was to show you a little bit the beautiful and the diverse landscape in several regions of France with grazing, and to show you also that livestock offers a very nice opportunity, positive impact on biodiversity, and also it strengthens the sustainability, of course, and resilience. So next slide, please. So today the issue is to face the climate change, as you know, and farmers are seeking a solution to reinforce climate risk resilience. And our association is developing activities and tools to get farmers more involved in the best practice to reduce gas emission, mitigate and remediate biodiversity losses. And we also anticipate trends to have animals diversity, because farmers need animals able to better cope with lower feed quality or feed scarcity, and to get animals with traits like robustness, resilience, health, and welfare. So the issue today is it is not clear if farmers will be able to keep up with the unprecedented speed at which climate is expected to change in the coming years. And that's why sorry, we are gathering forces in order to help and support small-scale producers to improve their incomes. So we are also working with cross-link with policy to ensure that the new common agriculture policy legislation fit to these challenges and fulfill the objective of the European Green Deal. Next slide. So I wanted to put this slide just to raise the fact that facing climate change, there is also a problem regarding genetic diversity, which can be compromised. So our association is highly involved in situ and ex situ programs, management programs for genetic variability in France, but also at an international level. And this is in the aim to work collectively with the breeder association to take the good decision on ruminant breeds utilization and conservation, and of course to protect endangered ruminant breeds. Next slide, please. So this is just to let you know that our farmers are doing a lot and a huge work towards decreasing these greenhouse gas, which involve methane, nitrous, carbon, and so all these very bad gas, I would say, is a big problem today. So we have just to keep in mind that methane is the second largest contributor to warming after carbon, and methane should be reduced as much as possible, and carbon footprint up to 20% by 2030. And this can be achieved by developing many practices. So better pasture management, best practice, adapting new technology, feeding strategy, breeding. We can work on reducing fuel energy use and mostly carbon sequestration to reduce the net emission. And you have here a multiple proposition like cover crops, avoid bare soil, agroforestry, grassland management, etc. So next slide, please. So I wanted to just in few slides to talk about what we do regarding reducing GHG in France. And you probably heard the presentation of Jean-Baptiste Delay, who are our expert, environmental expert. And this presentation was presented previously in GASL meeting in 2022. And he already talked about this tool that we have, CAP2ER, which is a multi-criteria calculator, and that measure greenhouse, and the tool enables the farmer to assess the environmental footprint of methane, carbon, and nitrate oxygen on a farm, and to be able to identify areas of improvement. So in few words, the methodology is based on in accordance with the EPPC 2 and 3 and with the FAO LIP guidelines. And behind the challenge of having a tool for a climate change, this tool will also be evaluating in order to integrate environment and indicator and to better identify other potential impacts on the environment and the sustainability, of course, of the farms. So next slide. So from the tool now, no, the previous, please. So from the tool, we are talking also about carbon agri strategy. This is a global and multi-criteria farm approach that have been developed to ensure the certification of the carbon gains. It optimizes the carbon cycle, the nitrogen cycle, the forage, the protein autonomy, and the use of animal waste to boost decarbonation. And just to give you an idea, in September 2023, we have almost 36,740 CAP2 ER diagnostics completed by 1,882 advisor trained, and this, of course, will enable us to reduce consequently CO2 in a range of 300 to 500 tons on a 5-year period. Just to let you know also that we have 2 collective national projects bringing together almost 1,300 farms that has been certified by the Ministry of the Environment for a total reduction of 700,000 tons of carbon. Next slide, please. So in this slide, I just wanted to highlight the fact that we are involved in many European projects, and these projects, of course, have the ambition to upscale low carbon initiative within Europe, but also to harmonize the tools and standard, and also co-innovate, co-develop, and scale up systemic and locally relevant solution to foster climate resilience. So an example of one of these projects is a Life Carbon project, and this project is led by our institute, and we are supporting almost 700 farms in the process of certifying emission reduction. Next slide. So besides this project, we have others, so I'm not going to explain deeply all of them, but there are activities regarding climate change mitigation, adaptation, and if you would like to have much more information, so please visit the website of this project. Next one, please. So now I think the very important question that we are facing today is how to go from research to practice, and how accelerate this process of low carbon transition. And definitely we have the ambition to reach 0.5 million farms in France with low carbon and almost 10 million in Europe. And of course, there is a variety of means and reported practice to implement, and some of them are listed here. So huge work is done regarding raising awareness among farmers, also training session, how to convince, recruit, advise farmers. We think that farmers should be encouraged by funding, and also to be involved in this MRV process, monitoring, reporting, and verifying. And of course, research and development are very important. So next slide, please. So regarding research and development, I wanted to just to give you some examples of what it is done today, and some of the most promising technological innovation that farmers are adapting or in progress to adapt. And one of them is feed additives and the 3-NOP, which is the first enteric methane reducing feed additive for ruminant to be approved by the European Union. And there are other additives for manure, or many works is going on genetic, rumen microbiota, Regarding the facility, there is also some project on how lowering emitting positive energy building and storage facility, and also the PLF, so precision livestock farming sensor in the building, or all these carbon storage that I presented before, grass management, planting trees, etc. There is also a very nice technology on albedo, because albedo is linked to carbon sequestration and how radiation is emitted, and this can decrease the warmth caused by greenhouse emission. And of course, talking about animal health and welfare is very important today, and we have a lot of action in this direction. Next slide, please.
Latifa, may I just interrupt you? You have just 1 minute left, so if you could.
Yeah, it is
the
end. It is the end before the conclusion. So just to give you an idea about a very optimistic and challenging project, which is Methane 2030. And this project aims to decrease by 30% emission in 2035. And it will be adapted to a large diversity of production and also different breeds, with the challenge to provide genomic solution and reference to enhance herd management. Next slide. This is my conclusion. So just to tell that ruminant life sector farming is essential, as you know, to the balance of our agriculture, food, soil, landscape, and society. But more effort should be deployed to communicate on the positive amenities it brings to the planet and the society. So the farmer engagement to impact their own carbon footprint to reduce emission in France is noticeable and should be continued and encouraged. And of course, research is very important, and cross-discipline experts and practitioners need together more forces to address the multidimensional challenges and the transition to sustainable energy system towards carbon. Thank you very much, and sorry for the delay.
Thank you very much, Latifa. I have a question to you, which will maybe make the transition to the next speaker, being in Switzerland with Nestlé. What is the role of the private sector in this transition and the uptake of these innovations that you mentioned, Latifa, in France?
Yeah, the role is very important. So that's why today with the public instrument, I mean, with funding, public instruments try to integrate also the private sector in order to boost all this innovation and to be able to help these farmers to fulfill the objective of Paris Agreement, and also have all this innovation in order to reduce this green gas emissions. So in France, there is a sensitivity of the farmers to go much more towards innovation, and the companies also are aware about the fact that they have to innovate in order to help farmers. So it is a win-win, and that's why it is really very important to go towards these companies in order to innovate in dairy and also in meat sector.
Thank you very much, Latifa. So with this, we move to Switzerland, and we see how Nestlé is tackling these issues with the presentation by Jürg Zaug. Jürg, I hope you hear us. Will you share your presentation from Switzerland?
I can do it, or do you want to share it from your side?
If you can do it, it's fine. We will see if it works.
Let's try that. Can you see it?
Yes, but you should put it in slide mode, in slideshow.
Can you see it like that?
Yes, now it's perfect. Thank you.
Okay. So I'm very happy to be here with you. And I think just to connect to what my previous speakers said, actually, they covered almost all the points. So there's not so much to add. But just the last question, Nasi, which you asked Latifa about the private sector. And I was happy to see actually Latifa, she showed a slide about the Clean Farm, this European Commission project. Actually, with Nestlé, we are part of that. 4 of our markets are part of this. So that's where we try to have a strong link with the multi-stakeholders, like with everybody who is on this call or everybody who is working on this in this field. But so so my view will be a little bit about the companies, what companies are doing, like how we are organized, how we are organizing fresh milk, then also how we are organizing the solutions to go towards a lower carbon dairy farming. So first we just looked at, Nestle, we buy fresh milk from all around the world, from about 250,000 farmers. So of course, just to simplify a bit, we make this kind of archetypes. So we have defined all our suppliers into 4 archetypes: the smallholder, the pasture-based. That's where what Bill showed actually from Ireland, or this could also be, of course, New Zealand or maybe Chile. Then the mixed system, which is kind of the European one, and then the stall-fed, which is, for example, North America, China, or also some of the very large units in Europe. Clearly, every farm is different, but we just feel we have to simplify it a little bit in order to have a focused approach. Then the way we are sourcing actually milk and milk derivatives. Like on the bottom of the page, you see kind of the farmers. These are the archetypes. These are our farmers, but this can also be the farmers of our suppliers, like our derivative suppliers. About 40% of the milk which we are sourcing comes directly from the farmers. That would be the journey on the left side, where we have a contract with the farmer. We pick up the milk every day or every 2 days, and it comes to our factory. There we make a lot of projects with farmers, which I will come to what kind of projects we are doing. But also on the right side, this is the derivative. This is where we are sourcing fresh milk from the, we are sourcing actually milk ingredients. This could be the fat, the proteins, etc. So of course, whatever learning we can do on the farm level, this will help both sides, our own sourcing, but also derivative suppliers with many of the partners. Then, as also some of the previous speakers mentioned, of course, there's a lot of research going on. There are a lot of solutions which already exist. Within Nestle, we have a kind of an approach which we say the discover, develop, deploy. So discovering, this is a Nestle Research, a unit in Switzerland, which is working very closely with universities, with startups, but also with companies to find new solutions. Then when these new solutions are more or less tried in vivo or in vitro, they come to the development part on the upper right side. This is where I am actually working. And we have pilot farms around the world where we test them. And then if these solutions are economically feasible for the farmers, but also operationally feasible, then we would kind of give them to our operations, and then the operations are deploying them with the farmers in different parts of the world. Just the network of farms, like since we are a global company, so actually we have farmers and suppliers everywhere. So that's why our approach is very diverse. And there are different solutions, of course, for different archetypes. And this is actually the summary slide of my presentation. So on top, we have again the archetypes, the smallholder, pasture-based, mixed, and stall-fed. And then on the left side, we say, if we want to go to a lower carbon milk production, we actually have only 3 options. We do either something with the cow, we do something on the farm, or we do something on the field. And then you see so basically the idea is that for every archetype, we have a menu of intervention, which the farmer can decide himself or herself, or sometimes it's the government, which is encouraging a farmer to do something or not to do something. Or also in some countries, actually, we are paying incentive for some of the practices or some of the project which can be done. Maybe just to link this a little bit to you see there are there's the animal health, which is highlighted on top. And I think that's where Wolf made a message is about the animal health. And we are totally convinced also, of course, the first and the most important part is actually the animal has to be healthy in order to be productive, in order to have a reasonable footprint. So animal health, soil health, these are for us the prerequisite. So we have a lot of projects which are sometimes very basic, sometimes, of course, more sophisticated to make sure that these 2 elements are kind of covered. And then the yellow ones, these are current projects which we are running. And the white ones are still projects which are maybe ongoing with some business partners or where we are trying to get more insight. But the idea is to have for each farm a menu of intervention in order to optimize it. Because clearly every farm can improve, every farm is different. And I think our role is to work together with our partners to make it as good as possible. So just a few, actually this slide is almost identical to what Latifia just showed in her thing. So it's about feed supplements. There's a lot of technology about precision feeding. This is quite exciting. Then of course at the farm, the whole manure management, the energy production at farms, these are big topics in many parts of the world. Of course, in Europe, the biogas, but in North America, it's maybe more the covering the lagoons or other interventions. And then in the field, also has been mentioned by some of the other speakers, you know, the precision agriculture, the whole discussion on the nitrogen fertilization, the soil carbon sequestration. There are many topics which are actually, I think there's a learning for everybody. And I'm sure many of you actually are much more experts than us. And that's why we are very much interested to be part of this journey and to be part of these partnerships and the discussion with everybody. So with this is the last slide. So I propose I unshare the screen again. This works.
Thank you very much, Jörg, for your presentation. We can give you an applause.
No, I just have to, I'm just not sure how to show this thing. Okay.
Yeah. So Jörg, I think you answered part of a question I wanted to ask you, but maybe you can give some more information. You mentioned the archetypes, these farms. So how many farms or archetypes do you have per country or per region? Because I guess that in every country there are different systems. So how do you make sure that it's representative of the different systems in the countries or the regions?
Okay, so first, of course, we have this four, we call them the mega archetypes, which is really just to put the whole world into 4 buckets. But then, of course, let's say we are sourcing fresh milk, for example, in Switzerland, which is the farms are more or less the same. So they would almost all fit into this mixed farming archetype. However, then, of course, the Nestle Switzerland, they will then split their own farms. They have about 300 farmers, again, in sub-archetypes, and they will say, this is maybe one archetype would be the dairy farms in Switzerland, which are in the flatland, or the dairy farms in Switzerland, which are more in the Alpine area. And then based on that, they will have to make the intervention plans or the other intervention strategies which fit best to it. At the end of the day, of course, we need for every farm, we need a plan. But to start, we have to start with some broad plans, some big, like some priority plans, and then we can go down to the details of each farm.
Okay, thank you. So then, rejoining what Bill has presented before, there is one question from the audience now, or yeah. Wait for the mic. Sorry.
Hello. Thank you. I just wondered whether to reach net zero for Nestle, will you have to do some carbon offsetting to be net zero, and what might that look like?
Yeah. Okay. No, this is, you know, our target is currently our baseline is 2018, and then our target is for 2025 to go to -20%, and then by 2030 to go to -50%. And this is for Nestle Global in absolute terms. So actually the Nestle global footprint in absolute terms is 93 million tons. So we have to reduce by 2025 about 15 million tons. Now we are pretty confident we can achieve that because of course we source from different archetypes. We are fully in Switzerland, you know, to reduce 20% will be super difficult. However, in some other parts of the world, actually will be quite easy, and we can also change our product portfolio, like we are selling some businesses or we are changing some of the recipe. Personally, too, I don't like to talk too much about net zero because we don't know how to get there. I think our focus at the moment is to do as much as we can for 2025, 2030, And I think with all the intervention which has been shown and which is discussed, which we know, we will get in this direction. And then let's have a call again in 2030, and then we will see the next part, which will then, I think there we will even need some technical solution or some totally new approaches, which at the moment we are not yet fully aware of.
Thank you, Jörg, for your answer. Now I propose that we move to the last but not least presentation, but Joël Berra, who is the newly elected president of the European Federation of Animal Science, EAAP, from Switzerland. So Joël, the floor is yours.
Can you put it in presentation mode on both sides? Also in this group, but if not, you can leave it like this. Yeah. Yeah, the advantage of being the last is that all the technical issues are solved, but the attention of the audience could be maybe a bit the challenging aspect. As you mentioned, I'm the elected EAP president, so I'm actually here a bit wearing two invisible hats. The one is the one that you mentioned, and the second is the head of strategic research division of the Agroscope, is the Agricultural Institute affiliated to the Federal Office of Agriculture. But there is no contradiction between these two roles, because I will try to show you that the drivers, the challenge are very similar, and we have the similar approach. I'm sure that many of this information, you already got it during many presentations today, but I want to point out some little detail that maybe you didn't notice until now. We all be aware of the very important role and the major role of the livestock sector in the agriculture Europe. And you can see that's almost 40% of the total output of agriculture is coming from the livestock sector. This is corresponding more or less at 160 billion euro. And this is more or less covering 2% or enrolling 2% of the active population. But where I want to point your attention, if you look at this map, you can see the large diversity of the livestock farming system that we have in Europe, and not only between the different countries, but within the country. So if you look at this map, I don't think that you can read the legend, but I can try to explain. The red dot are the low grassland and high livestock density, and the green one are more on the grassland based. So you can see that. Look at, for example, in France, in Italy, in Switzerland, in Ireland, how this diversity is really spread. Does mean that we will have maybe in every single country same challenge, but does mean that the solution cannot be the same for all the country and all the different regions. And personally, I like to simplify the system, and I'm identifying two major challenges that we have in Europe and also in the global livestock sector. The first is the demand of high quality nutrition and safe animal source food. But also this demand is not the same in all the countries. So if we will have a population that is close to the 10 billion in 2050, the diversity of this need will be related to the difference in the growth population, in the structure, in the income, and also on the consumer preferences. And the second major challenge is, of course, the sustainability of the livestock production system. And I think the four main domains that were pointed out by GASL, so the food and nutrition security, the livelihood and economic growth, the animal health and animal welfare, and also the climate natural resources use are the four main points where we have to drive our attention. Moreover, and I also know that you know exactly that also for the Green Deal, we have the goal to reach the carbon neutrality by 2050, and also the concept of farm to fork strategy specific for the agricultural goal in 2030. I try, and it will be the goal in my next slide, to show which are, for our perspective, the main research and development priority that we have. This list is absolutely not exhaustive and is just want to give you some example where actually research and development should be oriented. And I'm sure that this will be more or less like a review of many of the major points we have heard during the presentation in these 2 days, and we will hear also tomorrow. So the first should be the maximizing on the resource use and efficiency. So what does it mean concretely? We have to improve the productivity per head. This is main goal should be oriented on the reproductive efficiency, but also on improving growth, production of egg, meat, and so on, but not looking at a single year, but looking at the entire lifetime performance. This is very important. If we are looking only of a small part, this could be a big mistake we are doing. The second point will be to improve feed efficiency. There we can add on the breeding level, on the nutritional management. So for example, working on the diet composition, on the herd management, and on the individual tailored diet. And of course, without forgetting the alternative diet like the novel food and the forage use. The second is the approach on One Health, so working on the health and welfare. Not only for ethical reason, but if we look at this One Health approach, we will see that improving health and welfare will directly improve also the performance, because in that case we will be able, for example, using the improvement on the animal health through the genetics, also to reduce the use of antibiotic and medicament. And we can also improve the animal welfare by genetic nutrition, reproductive and management perspective. The third point is to reduce the competition between human edible food. So we heard very interesting presentation tonight about the competition between food, feed, and fuel. Actually, there we have a lot of effort that should be done and research on the food security, but also looking at the alternative food sources. I just mentioned here a couple of main aspects we can look at. So insect and algae, but also the local forage crop production, especially for legume. The reuse of the waste. This is something where I think we have a huge potential, because on one hand, we have to reduce our food waste. On the other hand, there is some product like the byproduct or the farmer food that can be reintroduced in the food chain or in the feed chain, and this could be a very big added value. And of course, the importance of grassland. We frequently forget that the ruminants are the only able to transform not used or actually a source of nitrogen that cannot be used directly by human, and only through the conversion through the ruminant we can have a high sources of protein. Of course, the fourth point is one of the most mentioned here, is the reduction of emission and losses. The mitigation of methane and emission and ammonia should be one of the major goals we have. We can add at the breeding level, knowing that the low heritability is an issue, but on the other hand, this will be a low, cost efficient and really a cumulative effect. So even very small effort in reducing the methane emission by breeding will have a long-term effect. We can add, of course, on the nutritional management level, so increasing the digestibility of the feed, using microalgae, feed additives that could be synthetic or natural, or also the use of legume and using precision farming. And at the end, also the manure management should be one of our major focus if we want to reduce not only emission, but also losses. The fifth point I mentioned here is to promote circularity, our ecosystems, and our ecology. In many cases, we forget to look at the entire system, and we just focus in a specific point without paying attention that maybe we can screw something or we can have some important action in a single point of this circle, but we have negative consequence on the other. And for example, the manure management, and to start considering really the manure as an important source of nutrient, and also improving the soil quality and to close the cycle of nutrient. This will be essential. The last point I wanted to mention in this list is actually the multifunctionality. So to enhance the positive externalities of the livestock sector. So here adding and also looking at the ecosystem service on provisioning ecosystem services that are actually directly with a material output, but also the non-provisional ecosystem services. Looking at the regulation on the supporting and also on the cultural ecosystem services. In all this point, where I see the role of the EAP, I think that's all you all know actually, which is the main role. That's actually to promote research, discussion, networking, and dissemination between the main actor around the livestock sector. The EAP in association with more than 35 countries, more than 5,000 members, and with more than 900 research institutions involved in. So I think we have the good number, we have the good network to reach this goal. And we are trying to do this with our scientific journal. So the family journal, I think you all know very well. Also with the annual meeting. And I really invite you now to take your phone and to scan the code, and please, you are welcome to join our meeting next year. And here is just to show you some very little number. This year in Lyon, we had more than 2,000 participants, and we have more than 2,000 presentations, so oral and theater. This means that know-how is coming to the EAP, is spread inside the EAP, which is the major challenge that we have is to take this know-how at the farm level. And this will be actually, I think, one of the main goals the EAP and all of us will have in the future. Don't want to forget actually to mention that we also try and also to be closer actually to the farmer and to different local organizations, also the regional meeting that are really playing an important role. And with this, I will conclude my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Joel, for this presentation about EAP. So you also partly answered one of my questions, which was, as a newly elected president, where do you see the biggest opportunities for EAP to tackle these drivers of change or to respond to these drivers of change, but also the main challenges?
Actually, I see that the challenge and the opportunity are overlapping. Because actually what we have to do is really to be able to take the scientific know-how at the farm level. And for do that, actually the challenge will be how we can reach the single farmer. We know that every single country has local organization, they have agricultural school, they have different projects. We heard about the great project that are doing the Chagas is doing in Ireland. So actually this is some very nice initiative. I think that the major goal, and also during my presidency, will be actually how we can implement this network. And now really we can, Latifa mentioned 10 million farm. We don't have 10 million researchers going to each farm. So we have to find a way of a better communication and efficient communication.
Very much for this answer. So it seems that everyone actually is going to the same direction to tackle these main issues, with some initiatives being maybe more advanced than others because they already reach farmers. You mentioned the case of Ireland, but also Nestle is doing this, and other initiatives rounding up this approach. So now with this, I would like to open the floor to questions from the audience here, but also questions from the chat. I don't know if there are any. We will have a look. So I don't know who would like to. Yes, please take the microphone, please.
Hello. Hello, Carolyn Schumacher from GulfMed. It's quite impressive to see all this innovation. I would just like to ask every one of the speakers whether they could explain how the cost for that will be disseminated across the value chain, or whether it is, again, the farmer who has to stomach all that.
Thank you. Do you want to address this question to a specific speaker, or who has the courage to talk first? From everyone, okay. Yes, exactly. So Ulf is willing to start.
Yeah, if I take the response to the new regulations on how to use antibiotics, I think it will be tough for those who are far out in the sense of using a lot of antibiotics in these countries. That will be tough for the farmers indeed. I didn't mention that, but the lowest use is in northern Europe, in Finland, Sweden, and Norway, and Denmark. And the farmers there have been working on this together with animal health services for decades. And they have a very, very high productivity in the top world range. And so, but I think that regulation will be really tough for farmers in some countries, indeed. And where that translates in increased costs or people go out of business, or how that plays out, I don't know.
Can I give it a shot? So I suppose it's a very pertinent and important question. But I think if we looked at the roadmap, and we work with Chagas that was referred to, and they brought out what's called a marginal abatement cost curve, where all the actions are costed, and on one axis then you have the contribution. And about 60% of that is actually efficiency gain at farm level. So it's not costing the farmer, it's generating an economic efficiency and economic return. The 40% then is challenging, and I suppose, look at, as I said, there is an element of regulation, there's an element of incentive, but there has to be market reward. So increasingly in Ireland, our agri-food industry is paying a sustainability bonus for the introduction of specific actions. But my job in terms of government is to ensure that the sustainability actions that are undertaken by various players, and there's a lot of them out there, contribute to the inventory, because that's the ultimate adjudicant in terms of whether we are successful in terms of it. So trying to ensure that we're educating industry as well as farmers on what are the metrics that are measured is just as important for me, so that you're populating. And look at the one thing I've learned is, like, you know, there's always compromise to try and achieve the ultimate objective and bring people with you. So I have seen where one company, for example, has 8 or 10 different measures that a farmer can select to generate the additional bonus. And in conversation with them, I've highlighted those that would be most beneficial in the longer term. So, you know, I suppose it's an evolving challenge for farmers. The difficulty is the pace, in my view, right? And that the demand is quickening, and it's happening more faster. But farmers do need support in terms of it.
Thank you, Bill. Jürg, you want to give your opinion about that question?
Yeah, I think this is one of the most relevant questions, I think, which is there. And I fully agree with some of the other answers which have been mentioned. You know, of course, it has, whatever intervention we do, it has to make sense economically for the farmer. Full stop. If it doesn't make sense economically, either somebody has to pay for it. Either it's the government pays for it, or then it's the buyer, like the milk buyer is paying for it, or somebody has to pay for it if there's an additional cost to it. I think that's really the key point. And what we see also, of course, as in some production systems, some of the intervention, yeah, actually they don't cost money at the early stage, because they are actually to improve the productivity, to reduce the losses, etc., like that. But then at a certain stage, some of the intervention, I think they will cost money, and there we need a system which can cover them.
Thank you, Jürg. Joël, you want?
Yeah, actually, if we look at the income of the farmer, we have two sources. One is, of course, they sell their product, and the other one, they have some support from government or from different institutions. In Switzerland, we have the so-called direct payment. So in my opinion, if the measure can directly improve the productivity, maybe reducing the cost, there you have a directly added value because you reduce your cost. On the other hand, if there is an improvement of ecosystem services, for example, that are not compensated by an increase of the price of the product, or maybe on the directly or the reduction of the cost or increasing of the income, there the policymaker should be able to compensate this difference. So I think this is the two way we have to add. And actually, it's not our role, at least not the role of the AP of the agroscope in this case, to work on that, but we can give the right instrument to the policymaker to take this decision on the right way.
Thank you, Latifa.
Yes, I would like to add just a point. I don't know if Emmanuel Coste, who is representing the Confederation of Breeders, is in the room. But anyway, our role as a research and development organization is to help to have this innovation ready for farmers. But after that, we have to be involved with the policy and also with the Confederation and the organization in order to see how the government can also help. And I gave the example of the carbon agri approach strategy, which will enable farmers probably to have this certification of carbon gains. And this is a way to say, okay, you will be, so please make efforts in order to decarbonate, but after that, we have to find also solution in order to help farmers sell this carbon, etc. This is just an example, but I think there are many others that can be done, and gathering all these forces is really important in order to fulfill also the objective of the farmer, because it is really very difficult for farmers to fulfill all the objectives without having some compensation.
Thank you, Latifa. Emmanuel will also complete your views.
Okay, we want to be part of the all the society efforts important for the future. So it's important to have also some other part of our funds, because it is only in CAP in Europe. It's quite difficult for farmers, because it's a lot of regulation. It's not easy for farmers to understand that they push voluntarily the farmers to go in the good direction. Actually, we have a problem with CAP, because, for example, a lot of restriction, for example, of meadows, of transformation between meadows and crops are not very the same in different regions. So we need to have more possibility to make money. But as you said, Joel, we want to have more money for farmers, because actually we want to have new generation, and new generation actually want to have money as those are part of workers in the society. So it is important to have this money. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would very much endorse that, though, in terms of where we look forward. So if we look at a capitalist society that we have, it's a very clear monetary value is put on food. You know, a kilo of food is this price, etc. The challenge is those ecosystem services and creating a value proposition from our pastoral systems. Okay, But to do so needs a couple of critical things. One is investment in developing baselines, then the monitoring, reporting, evaluation of them, but also credibility, because I think there will be a lot of offerings out there, a bit like snake oil, in terms of people meeting, I suppose, expectations and demand. And I think it falls to government to put a framework in terms of those. And certainly in Ireland, we're looking at those. How do you value the ecosystem services? How do you create that confidence in the market in terms of the value that's created? But I would caution on one thing in terms of carbon. And it is something I've cautioned, is that when we look at a carbon market, we have to recognize that inherently there will be a difference between a carbon market for compliance. So for example, tradable with ETS, which is not available in European policy, versus what would be a voluntary carbon market. And they will just be two different price points, realistically, okay? But you still have the same challenge, which is how to measure them, how to verify them, and how to give confidence to the market that this is repeatable over the longer term. So it's not easy, but certainly it's one of those sleep interrupters for people like me.
Thank you. We have one question online from Dr. Sarkar before I give the word to two ladies in the room. Dr. Sarkar from Bangladesh, can you just briefly give your question, I think, to Ulf?
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you. Ulf give a nice presentation regarding the emerging diseases and public health issues. My question is that what is the regulations did you follow in the European system now to combat the emerging diseases in livestock? New regulations.
Yeah, no, I don't think that there are any new regulations. The new regulations were about how to use antibiotics. When it comes to regulations and these emerging transponder animal diseases, they are the trade from such countries where these diseases are present. They are kind of regulated by VOA or former OIE that are related to World Trade Organization. So the principle is that countries that have a certain disease, other countries could refuse to import from these countries without being accused for trade war. It's a kind of legitimate way to say no to import. So that is the only regulation I'm aware of. Otherwise, there are, I think there are protocols, recommendations, etc., and practices about how to fight these ones, but no super harsh regulations.
Thank you very much.
Clear? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Ulf. A question, maybe you can just say your name and where you are from.
Thank you. I'm Giorgia Angeloni from Veterinary Sans Frontières International and Italy. So I'm coming back to emerging disease and specifically to African swine fever. So in your presentation, Professor Maxson, you mentioned it that African swine fever is causing increasing the need of increasing biosecurity in farms and the loss of outdoor pig farm. And this is a fact, but it's also causing loss of biodiversity in terms of breed and in terms of product. And again, coming to the presentation to Dr. Berard, it's also causing the loss of many local farms supporting ecosystem and supporting local economy, food provision for in a rural area. We are working in Romania and in Bulgaria, and what they are facing in the last 5 years is that the last indigenous breeds are totally disappearing. They are close to the extinction, and the backyard are now not present anymore. The number as now, for example, for Bulgaria, they pass from 30,000 to 7,000. And we are probably will go to experience the same now in Italy. And so my question is for Dr. Berard, what is the position to the European Association for Animal Production in this regard? Because I know that is a problem of veterinary issues, but is affecting an entire sector in the animal production. And I don't know if you have also, Professor, any suggestion on that, because in the field, what we are experiencing, it's that the farmers are alone fighting this, not receiving funds because they are not able, especially the small scale farmer, to obtain this type of economical subsidies. And so I think that we should work together to support this type of farming to not disappear. Thank you.
If I'm allowed to start, I mean, this was an observation from my side, what is happening. I'm not, it's not a favorable situation, of course, and it's terrible. And it's exactly as you were saying. And we see this same in Southeast Asia and in China, that the smallholders are disappearing because of this, because they cannot meet the biosecurity measures. And then one have to consider the alternative, that is that animals are dying under severe pain. I have no real, I don't think there is no real happy solution on this, unfortunately, to combine these two different views.
Or maybe give to the farmers the possibility to be in compliance with European law, but they need the support, economical support. They cannot fence it thousands of hectares to keep the animal outdoor. And if we are talking to the end cage movement that has been mentioned as well in this presentation, we are very far away from these goals. That was something, and the same is for avian influenza. Also, you mentioned this, and I think that I found sometimes some constraint to. We have some European goals that we want to achieve, but when we have an epidemic to face, all these good European goals really will be are forgotten. And but I don't think we should continue to try to achieve, even in epidemic situation. It's a challenge, it's a major challenge, but I think that animal production sector and veterinary one should focus on strengthening this to avoid to lose all a part of production. So that's it. So much.
Joel, you want to answer?
Yeah, actually, if I have to answer from the EAP perspective, unfortunately, what we are doing is more this networking and this dissemination. So there, I cannot see that we can maybe provide directly the answer. What we can try to do is through our scientific commission, maybe to try to create more network between the two, actually, the two major associations that are actually, I see this gap between the producer and the veterinarian. Yeah. I always make this very stupid joke that I see that the veterinarian are like the mechanic. They know how to cure an animal, and the other are the driver of the Formula One. They just look at the performance and the animation and so on. We really have to bring the two category to work together and to solve this problem. But this is of this example of the wine fever is one. We can actually mention many more with other disease and so that are spread in Europe. And I think that I really be happy actually to be more in contact with veterinarian and to see how they can contribute actually on solve this problem. Look at your example for them.
Thank
you.
Yes.
Last one, and then we take the last question.
I just to clarify, I don't think there are any European veterinarian that want to stop free-ranging pigs or free-ranging chicken, just to clarify that. But it's to protect them, they have to be indoors sometimes. That's, I mean.
Okay, if people are still want more answers or more discussion, I remind you that you can also continue later discussing about these topics. I have to watch the time, so we are still on time. Last question, please tell your name and where you are from.
My name is Ida Berg, and I'm from the Norwegian Dairy Council. And I think it's very interesting to see all the initiatives going on, all the innovation going on. But still, I'd like to ask a question that is probably hard to answer. And is this, are we doing enough? And are we doing it fast enough? Or will the regulators beat us and force us, and maybe also the consumers force us to do major changes? And just an example from my country in Norway now, I come from Oslo, and in Oslo, they decided they want to be the most sustainable city in the world, together with 40 other capitals. And one of the things they just put on a few days ago, they put a ban on meat in kindergartens. The kids are not allowed to have meat in kindergartens. And this is just a start. And they want to test it out and see how it goes. So I'm just asking, what are the barriers? How can we actually do this faster and talk more about it also to the people that are, you know, to the consumers, so they show all the things we are doing? What are we lacking to do more?
Who would you like to answer this question? Who has the courage to do it?
I can try to give you an answer, but you won't like it. I will try anyway. I think that in the research, we are absolutely fast enough in research. We are very slow in the implementation. How many results, how many good solutions we have in our scientific paper that are not applied, and why we are not applying. So I think that we have to improve this second step, not on looking on the specific solution, but how we can implement it. I knew it, you wouldn't like it.
Thank you. Bill, you want to give the final word on that question?
So it's a very, very interesting question, but I would like to compliment the FAO and the GASL in terms of grappling with this over the last couple of days, bringing that whole issue of sustainability, economic, environmental, but also nutritional in terms of, I know, the 4 headlines. So I think it's a really important conversation that's been had. I think I worked with farmers all my life, and I've often described it, you know, they will surprise you in terms of once they know what to do, they will do it because they are doers, if I can use it so simple as that. But we also have to be reflective that if the consumer isn't educated as well, there can be some binary choices that are not as simple in the real world as people might suggest. So I think it has to come from both sides. There's a demand on farmers to do more. I think, however, there is a kind of a very negative narrative sometimes that about farming that I don't think is fair or warranted. But equally so, I suppose that's where science meets education, where I suppose that opportunity for improvement has to be recognized, and we need to work relentlessly towards that. But equally, it has to be framed by realism in terms of consumer expectation and what can and cannot be delivered and at what cost, as the question was. That's my final observation.
Thank you, Bill. I've seen that Jürg had his hand up, but you put it down again. Do you want to say something, Jürg?
No, just, you know, of course, we are at Nestle, we are facing consumers all the time. And of course, we see a very big difference between consumers. So they are really, of course, the European consumer is definitely totally different than the Asian consumers or the North American consumers, South American consumers. And I think every country or every region has to kind of find its own speed to implement solutions which are kind of still appropriate. And then I think this is then a role where maybe, well, the brands have a role to play, but also with the consumer, the communication, or the governments, several societies are moving either faster or slower. At the end, I think it needs, of course, the consumer to pay for it. So I think whatever we can do, you know, to explain it to the consumer in a better way, in a more transparent way or holistic way, I think the better it is, and the more they will be ready actually to pay for a product which has a lower carbon footprint or which has more biodiversity, etc., like that. At the end, we are all consumers ourselves as well, right?
Thank you very much, Jürg. So with this, I would like to hand over to Shirley for the closing words. We are on time at the moment. But before that, I would like to thank a few people who helped for the organization of this meeting. The first person is Fritz Schneider, who has organized the whole program of this consultation, so the content and inviting the people. So a big applause to Fritz for doing this. And I would like also to thank Eduardo Arcedias and Lavinia Scudiero from the Agenda Support team for the logistic support and supporting us throughout the organization. Thanks a lot. And of course, also the people from FAO in the back, we don't see them, but they are very supportive. And then last but not least, all the keynote speakers here, but also online. And of course, also you for joining this session. So thanks a lot to everyone. And with this, I give you the word, Shirley. Thank you.
Thank you. I was going to use many thank yous, but let me add thank you to Nancy for moderating as well. I think this has been a really interesting discussion. What really struck me was that there is lots of work on solutions that could be deployed in response to drivers, because that's, as we said, what we're focusing on. There are lots of drivers, some of them we kind of know, the consumer pressure that we just heard about, for example, the climate, environment and so on space, new technologies coming along, unexpected perhaps, health drivers. COVID was a little bit well expected, but unexpected, we could say. So when we have our global meeting in Thailand, I really hope that some of these solutions that have been shared today, and probably many more, can be shared. This is what's happening in the Western Europe region. And here's what others could learn from that. It seems there's a pretty good toolbox here. Let me put it like that. That could perhaps help not only within Europe, but in other places to be quite responsive to drivers, those that we know about and those that we don't. It struck me too that there is a huge diversity of approach and of systems that are being targeted and organized in various ways. And that again is something that as GASL, we really try to focus on and really emphasize. There is no one size fits all. There are many different routes to sustainable livestock solutions in whatever context, and that it requires all stakeholders to work together in that regard. One other thing that struck me was quite a lot of talk about circularity. And it's quite interesting, if you go to some other parts of the world, that's how farming works. 90% of it or whatever is working like that. So again, maybe a forum such as GASL that brings different stakeholders together is a good one to share what's working and what's not working so well, and how can we better support each other. The last lady who's left the room now was asking about what can we do, and I think communication between ourselves, but also externally, including to consumers, is a really important piece of that puzzle. And that's something that as GASL, we have an ambition to do much, much more of internally, but also externally. So I hope many will come to Thailand to share your experiences, and I very much look forward to seeing you there. But I also thank you for your time and engagement this evening. Thank you.